Planning for career transition after retirement, brought to you by Net Money Hacks. Americans have been programmed to spend, 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 and many of us are not prepared for retirement when it comes. Without the right retirement planning, the security of retirement remains elusive and a point of regret. Fully 2/3 are forced to live below comfortable income levels. Moreover, most retirees have not made adequate psychological and emotional preparation for the trauma which retirement often entails. Some studies have found, for example, that as few as 10% of retirees were properly prepared. Without adequate preparation, the role disruption, relocation, destruction of long-established social ties at work, and a loss of job-acquired status can be devastating. Not only do you need to know the various facets in the retirement planning process and the tax advantage plans available to both business and private individuals, but there are regulations and limitations in the system that are important to be aware of. Employer-sponsored plans like stock options and discount programs can make a huge difference at the end of the day. One way to avoid the profoundly negative effects so often brought on by retirement is to plan and prepare for the retirement role, whatever that may be for you. In a sense, planning for retirement is no different from making preparations for a vacation. So your initial first step in this process should be the retirement goals you set for yourself and the timeline you want to prepare for the road in front of you. To answer this question, sit down with a sheet of paper and divide it into 2 columns. Mark one side, reasons I want to retire, and the other side, reasons I don't want to retire, and list the reasons that apply. There are no wrong answers, and you can always change your mind, putting items in both columns or changing items from column one to the other. Many people assume they will be taking a lot of trips around the world, leisure vacations that will last months, along with adventurous expeditions that will rekindle their sense of wonder. Not only are these kinds of trips expensive, but when the time comes, many people choose not to take these trips due to the discomfort of being so far from home. There's a balance of free time that gives leisure and ease when too much of it becomes unbearably boring for a retiree who is just used to being mentally engaged and challenged a lot of the time. When you make your list, ensure that you have realistic reasons for retiring and be honest with yourself about when you truly think it would be a good time to enjoy that time. There are alternatives and hybrid choices, of course, to everything, such as partial retirement or even taking on a pleasurable volunteering position doing something you truly like. Many people don't consider self-employment, which is a fabulous choice for a retiree who has a hobby, such as photography, ceramics, or woodworking. One interesting choice to consider is to retire a few years later to receive higher benefits. An additional 2 to 4 years can have a powerful effect. These years enable households to avoid the actuarial reduction in Social Security benefits. Benefits received at age 66 are 1/3 higher than those received at age 62. They allow workers to avoid tapping into their 401k balances, earn additional interest on those balances, and maybe even make further contributions. Finally, additional years of work shorten the period over which households must support themselves with accumulated retirement assets. In 1965, Congress enacted the Older Americans Act. Among 10 objectives listed, the first was for older people to enjoy an adequate income in retirement in accordance with the American standard of living. While the Older Americans Act does not suggest an amount, the conventional understanding of the goal is that retirees have roughly comparable standards of living before and after retirement. Social Security was never intended to fill this charter by itself, and President Roosevelt acknowledged as much before the first retirement benefits were paid when he said, "Social Security can furnish only a base, upon which each of our citizens may build his individual security through his own individual efforts. Retirees have been able to supplement the income security base provided by Social Security primarily through employer-sponsored retirement programs. To ensure that you are familiar with financial jargon surrounding the retirement plans, first let's talk about the categories of tax-advantaged retirement plans. The first category is known as a qualified plan. This kind of plan is permitted by the government to be tax deferred. Some qualified plans include cash balance plans, money purchase plans, target benefit plans, profit sharing plans, 401ks, stock bonus plans, employee stock ownership plans known as ESOPs. You will hear people misuse the term qualified plan to include all tax-advantaged retirement savings accounts, including individual retirement accounts. Those are IRAs, which are a primary savings vehicle for those without an employer-sponsored plan. The second kind of account type doesn't have a fancy name, but it includes 403Bs, IRAs, simplified employee pension, SEP plans, and saving incentive match plan for employees known as simple plans. An SEP plan is offered through an employer but is funded through an individual retirement account or an IRA, and it's part of the other category. It has lower regulations and requirements, making it easy for small businesses to offer to its employees. Since you are funding the SEP with an IRA, you can withdraw its money whenever you need it, but that doesn't mean it won't be tax or penalty free. It's much easier to access in comparison with a 401k. You see many 401k holders reliant upon plan loans and hardship withdrawals to access savings before retirement because of this. Even though an SEP isn't a qualified plan, it mimics one because it can contribute up to 25% of gross compensation with a $52,000 limit. The SEP plan has a caveat for small businesses that forces them to make the plan available to any employee who is at least 21 years old and has worked for the company for 3 out of the last 5 years with at least $500 per year in earnings in each tax year. This means even part-time entry-level employees are eligible and must be offered this retirement plan. The simple plan is only offered to employers with less than 100 employees and made for small businesses. When an employer chooses to have the simple plan as their retirement plan, they are opting to cover every single employee who has earned at least $5,000 in any previous 2 years and is expected to do so again this year. Like the SEP, a simple plan will be available to many part-time employees or just starting out employees. If you're an employee with a simple plan, you can choose to defer up to $12,000 of your salary. Note that this deferral of $12,000 is less than an SEP and also less than a 401k. If you work for a nonprofit, you're probably familiar with the 403B plan because it's a retirement plan unique to nonprofit organizations, such as hospitals, schools, charities, and so on. You must be a full-time employee to be eligible for the 403B, and you cannot be a contractor of any kind. The other requirement is that the employee must defer at least $200 from their gross pay. Much like a 401k, loans are allowed and in-service hardship withdrawals are allowed as well. The employer contributes regardless of whether the employee does or not, which is called non-elective contributions. So all of this stuff is happening with your money and your savings, but we need to consider the market outside your savings. And that's why we should talk about the financial bubble. In 1983, there were 175,000 private defined benefit plans covering 29.9 million active workers, according to the Department of Labor. By 2007, those numbers had dropped to 49,000 plans covering 19.4 million workers. So many private sector workers are marching towards retirement with only 401k plans, what some people call do-it-yourself pensions. At first, this new approach seemed like a wonderful ride as account balances ballooned in bull markets of the 1990s, but the first decade of the new millennium was a rude awakening, At the end of 1999, the private defined contribution plan balances stood at an aggregate $2.5 trillion. Saving for retirement is a long-term process, and financial bubbles represent the biggest risk to long-term investors. The usual advice to investors is to stay fully invested at all times, and financial bubbles is the only thing that throws a wrench into this way of thinking. When we plan for retirement, our focus should be on achieving our long-term financial goals. Ideally, we should pay very little attention to short-term gyrations in the capital markets. It's good news that the long-term returns on equities have consistently been high in real terms, at least in the post-World War II era. The need to rely on equities to achieve a decent long-term return has never been as great as it is today, with bond yields at record lows, but we put faith in American markets. We have faith that they will bounce back eventually. Financial bubbles, however, are fundamentally different from the frequent short-term market downturns that we are accustomed to seeing. When a bubble bursts, the losses can exceed 75% and prices might never recover. The prices might not recover for decades. This type of scenario will obviously wreak havoc on one's retirement planning. Our current situation makes the future radically unpredictable. According to information provided by the Social Security Administration, 9 out of 10 workers and their employers in the United States are earning protection under Social Security. About 1 out of every 6 Americans receive Social Security benefits every month, and almost all of the nation's aged population in those 65 and over have health insurance under Medicare. Most of us then have a stake in Social Security because if we live long enough, we will likely receive some benefits from the system. The Social Security system was born during the Great Depression as one of the most significant achievements of the New Deal. The Social Security Act was signed into law in 1935 by President Franklin Roosevelt to provide some income for aged retired workers. The law was amended in 1939, even before the first benefits were mailed out, to provide payments to the descendants of workers as well. In addition to providing some income for retired workers, the Social Security program was designed to encourage older workers to retire at age 65. So that room might be found in the workplace for younger persons. We've all heard this said many times, but it bears repeating. Social Security was never meant to provide for financial independence. From time to time, the trustees of the Social Security system release a report that projects the financial future of the system. The report contains projections based on the worst-case economic assumptions, as well as more favorable economic assumptions. The problem stems from the fact that our population is growing older because of a combination of lower birth rate and increased longevity. Medicare is really 2 types of insurance: hospital insurance, known as Part A, and medical insurance, known as Part B, which help protect people 65 and over from the high cost of health care. Disabled people under 65 who've been entitled to Social Security disabled benefits for 20 or more consecutive months are also eligible for Medicare. The hospital insurance part of Medicare helps pay the cost of inpatient hospital care and certain kinds of follow-up care. The medical insurance part of Medicare helps pay the costs of doctor services, outpatient hospital services, and certain other medical items and services not covered by hospital insurance. Hospital insurance is an automatic at age 65 if you are eligible for Social Security or railroad retirement checks as a worker. Medical insurance is a voluntary plan and requires payment of a monthly premium. The Social Security Administration suggests you apply for Medicare insurance 3 months before your birthday month to assure that your protection will start the month you reach 65. When you apply for hospital insurance, you will automatically be enrolled in the medical insurance aspect of the program unless you inform the Social Security Administration that you do not want this coverage. This is, however, some of the most inexpensive medical insurance coverage in the country, and it is difficult to foresee circumstances under which an individual of ordinary means should decline such coverage. Medicare provides basic protection against the high cost of illness, but it will not pay all of your health care expenses. Some of the services and supplies Medicare cannot pay for are custodial care, such as help with bathing, eating, taking medicine, dentures, and routine dental care, eyeglasses, hearing aids, and examinations to prescribe or fit them, long-term care, nursing homes, personal comfort items such as phone or TV in your hospital room, prescription drugs, patient medicines, and routine physical checkups and related tests. In certain situations, Medicare can help pay for in qualified Canadian or Mexican hospitals. Since Medicare cannot pay for everything, you should look for a supplementary health insurance policy that's been specifically designed to start paying when Medicare stops. Be careful not to buy a policy that duplicates Medicare benefits because you'll be wasting money. For more career planning after retirement, go to netmoneyhacks.com.